Hi everyone. My name is Olaitan, and I'm happy to be here again on this knowledge sharing session. And today I'll be talking about zero trust model. And the reality of things right now is the way we've been working has changed, and a lot of organization um, are moving towards zero trust model, right? And that is the reality of our business right now. Um, in the past, right, our traditional model of working was basically organization protecting themselves by putting up a perimeter around their network, and the users, the devices, the application, and all the organization data are protected by that network, right? Um, Prior to COVID-19, the reality of things was we our mode of work was basically end users going into the office. When you get to the office, um, we're using the office laptop, right? That's the corporate laptop, right? You connect the laptop to the organization's network and it starts working. And once you're done at work, you shut the laptop or the computer and we go home, then we get back from work. The next day, it's the same old circle. But a lot has changed after that period. A lot has changed after COVID-19. It changes a lot about how we get to work. Now we have situations whereby we are working from home and we are having access to the organization data with our personal devices. We are having access to organization data with even the organization's device. And it's not just the organization device, right? We are using our own device, and at the same time, we are having access to organization data, and we are having access to this data outside the organization network, right? So, there is a shift there, right? So now, the major challenges with the perimeter-based network was the fact that the organization operates on the assumption that all the systems, all the users were within a network and they can be trusted. Because if you look at it in the past, right, once you get to the office, you put on the computer. Once you put on the computer or your laptop, you try to connect to the organization network. Now, once you try to connect to the organization's network, you get prompted for your password. Once you put in your password, and you're able to properly authenticate, then it is being assumed that all the data, all the users in that network are trusted, you know. And the reality of things is there's been a shift, right? And that particular approach cannot accommodate the modern style of work because now we are a lot of literally everyone has their own personal devices that they are using to have access to the organization resources. Now, let's look at it, for example. I have my phone. I use my personal phone to access my organization's data from my Outlook, from my SharePoint to my OneDrive, to my Word, PowerPoint application, all on my phone. I'm having access to sensitive organization data from those devices. And that's not just it. I have IoT devices that connect to the organization data. For example, I have an iWatch, which is an IoT device that connects to my organization data because I can get notifications of my emails from my iWatch, which means there's been a really, really big shift, right? Which means the old approach can no longer accommodate BYOD devices, right? Because these are BYOD devices, right? Which means they're having access to data outside the organization network. And also, the reality of things is attackers can compromise a single endpoint within trusted boundary and quickly expand their foothold across the entire network. Because the reality of things is, when we look at the old approach, right, a device tries to connect to the organization data, to the organization network, right, and once this device tries to connect, and and once the connection has been established, there is an assumption that this is a trusted this is a trusted device. But in reality, once there is a compromise from one of the multiple devices that has connected to the organization data, from this single device, there can be an expanded foothold, right, across the entire network. And this is how breach has happened in the past, right? We've had several organizations suffer from this similar example that I've just spoken about. So the reality of things is there's been a shift from that old word garden style that we're currently using to that we're using in the past to what is currently happening right now. Because after COVID-19, we had situation whereby end users had to start working from home. So it's no longer we going to the office. Now we have situation whereby people are at home and they're having access to the organization data with multiple devices, not even just the corporate device alone, but with multiple devices. Because I've seen situations where end users have an iPhone, they have an Android device, they have probably not like an iPad also, and they are using all these devices to have access to the organization resources, which means there is a shift. It's no longer the same. And the old approach of going to the office, connecting to the organization data, and assuming those devices are safe devices or trusted device is no longer can no longer take care of our present situation. So with today's model, right? With today's model, we have blown signal from different devices, from the home office to employees having access to the organization software as a service application, to employee having IoT devices, to different customers having access to the organization application, having access to the organization data from different locations, to end users using personal devices to have access to the organization application, to the organization having a multi-cloud architectural system or having an hybrid setup, to even partners trying to have access to the organization cloud services. So, there's been a massive shift. It's no longer the same. There's been a massive shift. It's no longer the same. And what it means is the old approach is no longer sustainable. So now let's take a look at how the world has changed over the past few years, right? Now we have a situation whereby it's no longer an on-prem setup. It's no longer on-prem setup whereby you go to the office, you connect to the organization data. No, now we have 94% of organizations using cloud resources. Now everyone is moving to the cloud. Everyone is leveraging on the capability of the cloud. As of now, we have 5.2 million mobile business application being accessed daily by employees. Now we have organization with different businesses, right? With different businesses and with different business software as a service application that are being accessed on a daily basis by employees. Now, also, we have over 7 billion internet connected devices in use worldwide. The reality of things is, there are so many devices organization end users are using to have access to the organization resources. And also, we have 60% of organization currently have a formal BYOD program in place, because the reality of things is this. Now, we have people working remotely. A lot of people are working remotely currently, and at the same time, some people work hybridly, probably pop into the office once in a week, probably pop into the office maybe like twice in a week, and it's no longer the same approach of working fully from the office, right? So now BYOD is now a major thing in a whole lot of organizations that you go to. So BYOD means bring your own device. And now this is a situation whereby end users are having access to the organization resources with their own personal devices, right? So now this is the reality of things. This is our current reality right now. So I want us to take a proper look at the old world and the new world. So the old world prior to COVID-19, how we were working, now to post-COVID, what has changed? What is the differences? So now in the old world, right, our users, our employees, right? So in the old world, prior to COVID-19, the approach was you go to the office, you connect to the office data. Once you're able to put in your work email and password, and probably if your organization is using MFA, once you connect to that organization network, you are assumed to be a trusted device. Your device is assumed to be trusted, but it's not the same right now, because the reality of things is now users are no longer just employees, right? Users are employees. Your users are also your partners, customers, and bots, right? So now let me break this down. So now, as a business, our end users connect to the organization resources to have access to their email, to have access to the organization data, to have access to the organization application service in different cloud environments and sort of stuff like that. At the same time, it is not just our employees that are users. Now, different businesses has different partners. We have different partners that we work with, and now also our partners need to have access to our applications, to our data. So the reality of things is this: our partners are also users, because for these partners to be able to have access to our resources, we also need to create some sort of identity for them to be able to have access to the organizations, to our business resources, right? Or probably our cloud service or one thing or the other in our environment. So the reality of things is our partners are also a user. Then also for customers, because depends on the kind of businesses we do. For some businesses, customers have to integrate into the environment to be able to have access to data, to be able to probably complete a transaction and sort of stuff like that. So the reality of things is users are no longer employees, and also our users are our bot services. Now AI is a thing. AI agents having access to the organization data. So the reality of things is our users are no longer just employees. Our users are our employees. In the new world, users are employees, partners, customers, and bot services. Then also, in the old world, prior to COVID-19, it was usually corporate managed devices, right? All you need to do is just go to the office. Once you get to the office, you connect to the organization's system, or you connect to the organization laptop, and you get to work. Once you're done, you shut down the laptop, you go back home, you continue the same cycle. Prior to COVID-19, that was the style of work in the old world. For the reality of things right now is BYOD is now a thing. IoT is now a thing. Earlier on, I was talking about the fact that I have an IoT device. I have an Apple Watch that connects to my iPhone, because with my iPhone I have access to my organization's email. I have access to my organization documents on the SharePoint side, on OneDrive side. I get notification of all these on my IoT device. So what it means is we've moved from just corporate managed devices to BYOD devices and even IoT devices. So there's been a major shift. And in the old world, it used to be on-prem applications. Organizations put their application on-prem, right? They have their own data center where they put their own application. But now the reality of things is we've gone from on-prem to explosion of cloud applications. Now we have organizations deploying several applications in the cloud for customers, for partners to be able to have access to. That's the reality of things. In the old world, it used to be monolithic applications, but now we have composite application. We have public RESTful APIs that customers, AI agents are having access to. So there's been that massive shift. Now, also in the old world, it used to be corporate network and firewall, but now we have expanding perimeters, right? We have situations whereby our users are having access to our data from different resources, right? From different resources, from different devices, from different locations. It's not just connecting to the organization network now. Now the perimeter of our workflow has expanded. We have situations whereby people from Africa, you can see someone in Africa working in Europe, and they need to have access to the organization resources in Europe. So it's not just about going to the office again. It's not just about having access to it's not just about connecting to the organization network and firewall again, but now there's that expanding perimeters, because people are literally working from home. People are literally working from different locations. They're having access to the organization resources from different locations outside the office. And also, in the past, it used to be local packets tracking and logs. Now we have explosion of signals. Now we have employees having access to our resources. We have IoT devices. We have BYOD devices. We have cloud applications that have been accessed by partners, by customers, by bots. We have our REST APIs integrating into our AI agents and all of that. So there is that explosion of signal, which take us to the fact that we have a new reality. And with a new reality, there's a need for new principle, right? And that is where zero trust come in. Because for zero trust is not a product. It is not a strategy. It's not even a technology. It's a philosophy. It's an approach to security. Because a lot of times when people talk about zero trust, they believe when you try to talk to people about zero trust, they believe, oh, is zero trust, is it not a technology? Is it not a technology? Is it not a solution? But for me, I usually tell people, look at zero trust. Zero trust is a way of life. And zero trust, as the name implies, right? It's assumed for every transaction, for every user, and every device is a potential threat. And which means you need to require continuous authentication and verification. So let's look at this. Let me paint zero trust in this scenario, right? Let's look at the situation whereby I'm going to work. I'm going to work and I need to have contractors coming to work in the house. And for the contractors, they are coming to work in my library and in my kitchen, because the door to my library is bad and the door to my kitchen is bad. And so I'm going to the office. Usually I pop into the office I work from 9 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. So on that particular day, contractors are meant to come in and they are meant to come to like do something in my they're meant to come to fix the doors of my library, and they're meant to fix something in the kitchen. So basically, where they are working will be in the library and in the kitchen. I have my kids in the house. I can tell them, okay, you know what? I have individual A and individual B coming in today. Individual A and B are contractors from company A. They are coming in to fix the door of my library, and they are also coming to fix some things in the kitchen. So they are only working in the library and in the kitchen. That is where they need to have access to. So I'll tell them. So I'll be leaving the house by 9 a.m. and individual A and B are coming around 11 a.m. So once you hear the bell, verify explicitly, right? Verify explicitly. Make sure it is individual A and individual B. Those are the two people I'm expecting in the house. It has to be just individual A and individual B alone. So what it means is I've been able to tell my kids, verify explicitly. Verify explicitly. So when individual A and individual B get into the house, once they hear the bell, my kids will go to the bell and do their check-ins and see that, okay, yes, it's individual A and individual B. Then also I'll get to tell them, you know what, when individual A and B get into the house, give them just 2 keys. We have a master key in the house. We have a master key that opens all the doors to the house. Do not give them the master key. Just give them the key to the library and the kitchen alone, because they will only be working in the library and in the kitchen. So technically, what I've been able to do is tell my kids to use the principle of the least privilege access. We only want to give individual A and B access to what they need alone and nothing more than that. So this is what Zero Trust is speaking to it. The first principle of Zero Trust is verify explicitly. After explicit verification, you also want to use the least privilege access by giving them just the access they need to complete the task and nothing more. And finally, you also want to assume breach. Then I'll tell my kids, you know what? Since you've been able to verify that it is individual A and B, let them in. And once they get in, give them the keys that they need, just the key to the library and the key to the kitchen. And once they are done with what they need to do in the house, once they leave the building, make sure you shut the door. Do not assume they've shut the door. Go to the door and shut the door. You make sure the door is shut. So technically, what I've done is I've been able to preach the principle of Zero Trust to my kids. I've told them 3 key things to do. The first is verify explicitly. Make sure it is individual A and B before you open the door. And when individual A and B gets into the house, make sure you don't give them the master key to the house, because with the master key, they are able to open all the doors in the house. Give them the key to the library and the key to the kitchen, because that is where the contractors are working. Then finally, once the contractors must have been done with what they need to do, make sure you shut the door. Make sure the doors are locked. Make sure the gate is locked. So the principle of Zero Trust works based on these 3 key principles, right? The first is you want to verify explicitly, and the second is you want to use the least privilege access, and finally, you want to assume breach. So now, let's look at Zero Trust across our entire digital estate, because the reality of things is we have our identity. Everything starts with identity and access management. And with identity and access management, it involves the right user having access, having the right access, and nothing more than that, right? So with Zero Trust principle, we are able to achieve Zero Trust across our identity, because now, having taken care of our identity, the next thing is our users have different devices. We also want to protect the devices our users are using to have access to the organization data, to the organization application. Now, after taking care of devices, the reality of things is we also have different applications, right, that our end users are having access to, because as organization, we have different software as a service applications that our end users will be having access to with their various devices. We also want to make sure that we achieve Zero Trust across this environment. Then also, as an organization, what is our infrastructure setup looking like? Are we in the cloud? Are we using an hybrid setup, or are we using a multi-cloud architectural system? We also want to make sure that Zero Trust is properly obeyed across our infrastructure setup. Then also in terms of our networking, we also want to make sure it's the same around this environment. And finally, in terms of our data, how our end users are having access to our data, how our partner are having access to our data, what they can do with the organization data, we want to be sure that Zero Trust across our entire digital estate is properly being covered. And that is the goal of every business right now, because for every business, the goal is to have Zero Trust and everything well integrated with an end-to-end security across our entire digital estate, right? So now let's look at Zero Trust. The brain behind Zero Trust is conditional access control, right? Because if we look at it, our employees, everything starts with employees. Everything starts with identity and access management, because that is the genesis of our problem. That's the genesis of threat, or that's the genesis of a breach occurring. A breach starts when something must have gone wrong around identity and access management. And the brain behind zero trust is to have the right and proper conditional access control in place as a business or as an organization. So let's look at zero trust based on conditional access control. We understand the fact that we have employees or partners, that these are users, and that are trying to have access to our data, because in reality, right, our users need to have access to our data, right, for them to be able to go about their day-to-day business. But we want to be sure we have conditional access controls in place, so that when things goes wrong, we are able to take action, and automated action is being taken. So what am I saying? The first thing starts with our users having access, right? We want to be sure that yes, our users are having access with a trusted and compliant devices, and this is where conditional access come into play. We want to set conditions for our compliant devices, such that when a user sign in, right? When a user sign in with probably their federated identity, or from different identity provider, based on the kind of business that we must be doing, be it their Microsoft account or Google ID or federated accounts or account from different identity provider. So once that user try to have access to the organization data with their device, we want to be sure that okay, whatever device this end users is using, or the end users are using, be it an Android device, be it an iOS device, be it a macOS device or a Windows device, we want to be sure that okay, these devices are trusted and they are compliant devices based on the compliance policies that we must have set for the organization. And this is why conditional access is actually very, very important. And once conditional access mark that, once the user sign in, the signing has been authenticated, they don't have access to the organization data yet, it goes to the next stage. The next stage is we want to be sure that this device or devices are compliant. Once it's marked that, it does its check and it marks that, oh yes, this is a compliant device. That is not just it. It also wants to go to the geolocation or to the corporate network. We want to be sure that okay, yes, what location is this user trying to sign in from? Because for some organization, part of the compliance policies might be okay, currently our business is in Europe. We don't want to work with customers outside of Europe, or probably customers in one geographical location or the other. When an authentication request is coming from this particular geographical location, we want that request to be blocked. That user must not have access to the organization resources, be it on this cloud SAS application or on-prem application or any of the organization resources, or there should be a limited resources. So different organizations have different internal objectives, have different compliance goals. So the good thing is, with conditional access control, we are able to achieve this, right? We are able to put in the right controls in place. And for example, it could be, okay, this user has been able to authenticate, the device has been marked as compliant, they are coming in from the right location, and also you can allow them to gain access to the organization resources. But in a situation whereby, okay, this user is trying to have, this is the right user, the login credential is correct, the device has been checked, and we can see that the device is compliant. Well, let's give them a limited access because of probably they are using a client application method, or they are using auth method to authenticate. That particular user is going to have a limited access to the organization resources due to the fact that they are using a client application. Conditional access is like the brain behind zero trust. So you're able to put different conditions in place. You're able to allow or block access. You're able to limit access based on conditions that you've defined. You're able to require multi-factor authentication for every authentication request. You're able to enforce password reset based on some policy. You're able to block legacy authentication, because the reality of things is this. Now, we have explosion of signals. Our perimeter has expanded beyond what it used to be, because we have several things happening in the world. Our users are no longer just our internal users. We have bot service, we have agents, AI agents having access to our resources and all of that. So we want to be sure that if you're using legacy authentication, you get blocked. We want to be sure that everything goes right. So in summary, with conditional access, it acts as the brain of zero trust, and we are able to put perfect conditions and control in place before end users or before customers or partners are able to have access to the organization resources. So let's look at the zero trust architecture, right? Just like I said earlier on, everything starts with identity and access management. So let's look at it from the identity level, which involves both the human and non-human, right? So because why I said non-human is because now our users are no longer just humans, right? Apart from the fact that we are logging in into the organization, we are logging in with the organization credentials, we are having access to the organization resources as human. We also have AI agents that are connecting to the organization API, that are having access to the organization resources, right? So it is a mixture of both human and non-human, and that is why the Microsoft Entra ID protection, workload ID, Entra ID governance, Defender for identity come into play to help protect across all these layers, from both the human and non-human layers, and you're able to enforce strong authentication and make sure your endpoints are compliant. And when we say endpoints, we are looking at both corporate and personal devices, because the reality of things right now is end users are no longer just using corporate devices to have access to the organization resources. It's both a mixture of corporate device and BYOD devices. And that is where Intune comes into play, right? Intune as a solution focuses on MAM and MDM, right? MAM means mobile application management, and MDM means mobile device management, which means it takes care of both corporate class and BYOD class. And at the same time, the Defender for endpoints comes into play, which gives the organization that proper endpoint detection and response capability across all your endpoint devices, across all your endpoint devices. And when I say endpoint devices, I mean your iOS, your mobile phones, your corporate laptops, your IoT devices, they're all covered in this regard. And you can leverage on the telemetry analytical assessment of this EDR solution to be able to have that proper just-in-time control and version control for all these endpoint devices. Now, once a user has been able to authenticate with the right device, right? There's an authentication request, and the device has been tagged to be compliant. So the next thing is we also want to evaluate these devices, right? We want to evaluate these devices, we want to evaluate these users, we want to be sure that, okay, yes, these users, these devices comply to the organization compliance policy. We want to be able to have a proper visibility in terms of, okay, what is the organization security posture assessment is looking like across all these devices, right? And also we want to be sure that, okay, yes, these devices, these users are compliant to the organization compliance policy. And that is where the threat protection comes into play, right? Because now, after a user must have been able to authenticate The next thing is they want to use their device to have access to the organization resources. And now the organization resources are in different places, right? It could be probably a user trying to like have access to the organization email, or probably having access to the organization resources in the cloud. And this is where the Microsoft Defender comes in for threat protection, right? You want to have that continuous assessment. You want to have that threat intelligence. You want to have that forensic of these devices, of these users. You want to be able to like provide an automated response, right? And yes, and that is where the Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365, Defender for Identity, Defender for Cloud Application, and the Defender for Cloud comes into play, right? So with this set of defenders, you're able to protect your email environment, your endpoint devices, your identity, be it on-prem. You're able to protect your cloud application, and also when all these things has been checked, and when all these things have been seen that okay, yeah, these devices, these users obeys the organization compliance policy, they can move towards having access to the organization data. And this is where purview comes into play, right? With purview, you're able to check through and see, okay, yes, the right user is having access to the right data, and you're able to properly protect the organization data. But in summary, this is what the zero trust architecture looks like, from the identity level up to the data level. And we can see the structure, right? We can see the structure, how we move from identity to endpoint to threat protection, applying the zero trust policy to our network, both public and private network, and to our application and data and infrastructure. So I wouldn't so for me not like waste our time, let's move to the benefit of zero trust model. The reality of things is, with zero trust model comes with a lot of benefits, right? With zero trust, you're able to allow conditional access to certain resources while restricting access to high value resources on managed or compliant devices. And also, you're able to prevent network access and lateral movements by using stolen credentials and compromised devices. And also, with zero trust, your users are able to be more productive by working however they want, wherever they want, and when they want. And the reality of things is this: identity is everything, and we can make it become control plane, right? And we can consider an if this then that automated approach to zero trust, because that's the reality of things. If this particular device is not compliant, then do not give access. If this device is compliant, give access. So the reality of things is, with zero trust model, we can consider that if this then that automated approach to zero trust, then we can also enable new business outcome that were not possible previously. So I believe we've been able to learn something new around the capability of zero trust, what it means, and why it is important for our business, right? You can see it, we can see it. We've gone through all the layers. We can see the reality of things. We can see what zero trust is able to do for our business. So I believe we've been able to learn something new about zero trust. We've been able to see why it is important, and we can see what the brain behind zero trust is, and how zero trust um addresses all our business concerns. Thank you.